Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect writer, James Anderson. Great to be talking with you, James. We finally made it. It is the eve of opening day. Congrats to you, my friend, and all the great work you did leading up to the season, and a brand new, fresh update to the top 400, which will be our main topic of conversation. But James, this latest top 400 update, man, great stuff. Obviously on the site, you can check it out for yourself, rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial. Top 400 prospects. And obviously, thanks to our tech crew, up, down arrows, double up, double down, indicating risers and fallers. And we'll go over a lot of those guys today. But anything else general you want to lay out about this update before we dive in?
Well, I think obviously, a lot. You could argue that much of this movement, maybe you could say, is an overreaction. But I think that all I'm really trying to do with these is sort of tell people sort of where I'm at on guys, and this is sort of how my brain works. This is kind of where I think the values are, and the type of guys that I would be trying to trade for right now based on, whatever it is, just a report or how someone's looked this spring, or just anything to do with their status, their stocks.
Yeah, like you said, it's the most recent data point we have, and there's such an uncharted territory here when it comes to evaluating these guys. And so, yeah, I think it may be tempting to say, oh, you're overreacting, but like a guy with Alec Minnow, who, it was down the list, we were going to jump to him eventually, but just the dominance, the level of dominance he showed, and I think myself included, that kind of mental jump, the mental gymnastics it takes to have that year of just missing data, but know that there was development taking place. There were strides being made as a player, but we just haven't seen it. There's no way to gauge it. And now we have a little bit of a way to gauge it, and it is, it's like a steak being thrown to the wolves. I love to consume it, and yeah, maybe I get carried away with a guy like Manoah. You have moved him up to 33rd, but I do put stock into what I've seen, because sometimes extremes in those small samples do tell us something. And with Manoah, we're already seeing their depth being tested. I think they're starting Ross Stripling and then TJ Zoik second and third. So I'm pretty high on Manoah, and I think there's going to be a definite need for him this year.
Yeah, I changed his ETA. Sorry about the train in the background.
You're good.
I changed his ETA just based on what he did this spring, and I didn't think he was going to debut in 2021 prior to spring training, and now I do. And there's just more evidence than we had before that the stuff absolutely plays. And part of it with Manoah is kind of, there's going to be confirmation bias. I don't really care who you are, ranking any players for any sort of fantasy, anything. There's going to be some confirmation bias that seeps in on guys that you were high on, and then they kind of go out there and sort of prove it. And Manoah definitely falls into that with me, where I expected him to have a breakout year, and I said that in his outlook, but I didn't expect him to kind of break out in this type of way on this type of stage. I thought that he would be maybe breaking out at high A, and then maybe getting some double A towards the end of the year. To me, I think this is a guy who is absolutely on the fast track to the majors.
Well, we'll jump back up the list. Talking about spring training and the latest samples and data points we have, Manoah just jumped into my mind. But jumping back up the list, we have a very all new number one ranked player. And you hinted at this last week, but Julio Rodriguez is your number one. Another guy that we got to see in spring, and while I don't think we'll probably see him this year, there's an outside chance he forces their hand, right?
Yeah, I changed his ETA as well. I had him at 2022. I think it's close to a coin flip, but I'm basically betting that he's gonna just force their hand. I mean, if he looks big league ready at the end of May or early June, I think it's going to be very difficult from an optics standpoint for them to just keep him in the minors for 3 months when people kind of think he's big league ready. We've definitely seen teams do it before, but if you're going to start the clock on Jared Kelenic, and I mean, Kellnick is obviously ready. I mean, he's going to be up before Rodriguez, but if you're going to start the clock on Kellnick and you're going to start the clock on Gilbert, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just start the clock on whoever's ready at that point. And, maybe it'll be a situation of him just needing a spot, because if I don't think Haniger, Kellnick, Lewis, and Trammell are all going to be raking and performing and healthy at the exact same time. But I guess that could happen, and that could kind of keep Rodriguez down. But part of the reason I moved him ahead of, I mean, he's always been ahead of Kellnick for me, but part of the reason I moved both of them ahead of Franco is I no longer think that Franco beats Rodriguez to the majors by any sort of significant time. Like, I think they're both not locks to debut this year, but I think if I had to pick, I would bet that they both do. Very
interesting. So Seattle fans celebrate, dream on the future. You have the top 2 ranked prospects on James's top 400. I love Kellnick. I thought he was ready this time last year. Of course, they're waiting. But I don't see any way he's down past May 1st. So really excited about Jared Kellnick. Franco, I took him in labor at $6. I thought maybe you'd see some time at third. I mean, they're already down. I mean, they're already starting Yoshi Tsutsugo at first with G-Man out. But you just think Franco, with the other options, he just isn't all that much better than them right now. But he's going to overtake them this season.
Yeah, they've got good options. They've got like 2.5 to 3 win players all over the infield. So
it's a high bar to clear on that team.
Yeah. And he hasn't forced their hand yet. Like, I mean, I think he would. Somebody's going to be struggling. Like, someone will get off to a rough start, and if
somebody get hurt,
if he goes to AAA and just is awesome and looks like he's just not getting tested there really at all, I'm sure they'll find room for him in June or July. But it's not just about somebody else getting hurt or someone struggling. Like, he also has to be holding up his end of the bargain. And honestly, I think Rodriguez, like, if you send Rodriguez and Franco both to AAA right now, I think Rodriguez is going to put up better numbers.
I hear you, man. Rodriguez is a hell of a prospect. We got a glimpse of that in spring training. Exciting things to come with him. And then Bobby Witt, we said earlier, in the main event 15-team league, we'll try to hold him until we can't any longer. You may have to sit me down to a banquet of consequences and lay it out for me. But do you think the Modesty injury actually does affect his timetable, or are you still assuming he actually does play some minor league games with, and probably midsummer?
I don't really think it affects anything, because I mean, if it was just a matter of you didn't think you had a spot for him, well, I mean, you definitely had a spot for him. Like, you could have easily had a spot for Bobby Witt. Like, he's not any less blocked than he was before. I mean, that he's already better than Michael Taylor. I can promise you that. So, I just think this is way bigger than an injury to one player. I think they clearly have a plan with Bobby Witt, and Modesty will be back sooner than later. I mean, he's not going to be out for months. This is going to be a multi-week absence, but I just don't think it's going to be related. I mean, they're going to bring Witt up when he's up for good, and I think that'll be hopefully sometime this summer, but it might not be. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, all these guys, the only guy that we can say with extreme certainty are going to be up in the first, couple weeks, 3-4 weeks of the season is Kellnick. The rest of them, there's a lot of other factors at play. I mean, they've got to perform and there's got to be a spot, but with a guy like Bobby Witt, it's much more goes into the decision on when he's going to debut than just their starting shortstop missing like a month with an injury.
Yeah, okay. So that Modesty injury not really having a big implications on Witt. Okay, I just wanted to touch on that. And actually, since we're on the topic of the Royals, let me ask you about Kyle Isbel, James, because he's a double green arrow up guy for you, now ranked 71 on your top 400 prospect rankings. And it sounds like he's actually going to be on this team and in the starting lineup tomorrow on opening day. So Kyle Isbel, 24 years old. What can you tell us about him, and why is he a big riser for you?
Just because he kind of kicked down the door in spring training. I mean, I think he's
ready to rock.
Yeah, he's on the short list of guys that they're building around offensively. He's a really good defensive outfielder. I think he, either center field or right field, he'll be manning that spot for a long time for them. And he's just a really polished hitter. I mean, he's definitely hit over power, but he could be maybe like a 15 homer guy. But really, the big selling point for fantasy is that this is a guy that can steal 20 bases.
Yeah, that's
pretty easily
nice.
if he gets 600 plate appearances. So
freely available in most leagues.
Yeah, absolutely needs to be on the redraft radar in roto leagues because of that speed. And when I kind of envision this team sort of long term, like how the pieces are all going to fit, I think they have Benintendi locked in left field. And then I think Kyle Isbel is going to be their long-term center fielder. And maybe Hunter Dozier ends up in a corner outfield spot as well for them once Bobby Witt's ready. But, I mean, Isbel is absolutely a long-term cornerstone piece for them. And so when a guy has that type of spring and sort of forces the team's hand, that you got to take notice.
Yeah, man. I'm thinking I might have to, we have Tout Wars Fab running here in a few hours. I may have to, I don't know, maybe throw in a bid on him. I was actually thinking, too, I got him in my solo main, Kyle Isbel. Maybe I'll start him over a guy like Jackie Bradley. That seems like maybe a little bit of a stretch, but maybe not. I don't know. I just, I'm jumping around a little bit. I just thought, since we were talking about the Royals, you think that'd be overdoing it? Isbel over Bradley?
I would probably just let it. I would probably base my decision on who was in the
lineup.
If one of them's in the opening day lineup and one of them isn't, I'd go with the guy that's starting. Because I mean, if Isbel's starting on opening day and Bradley isn't, probably bet Isbel gets more starts this weekend than Bradley.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Bradley's a lock to start more than one game this weekend.
Wow. Okay. That's not great to hear. So, yeah, maybe I'll have to look at that. But that's kind of in the range where Isbel is. And I have in a couple keeper leagues, too. So we have to drop a player to make room on the roster for Isbel right away this week. But jumping back up to the list, C.J. Abrams, another guy who impressed in spring. And then Andrew Vaughn cracking the opening day roster. Good for him. Love to see that. Marco Luciano, 7th-ranked prospect on the updated top 400. Spencer Torkelson, Adley Rutschman, Brian Hayes, Alex Kirilloff, Dylan Carlson. We will not go all the way down the list, but I did want to rattle some of those off. Love seeing Vaughn. You and I pretty heavily exposed to Vaughn, hoping he hits the ground running.
Yeah, a lot of exposure. And
maybe overexposed.
I just, I couldn't pass him up where he was going. I mean, everything was just pointing like, this is the guy who's going to just play every day for this team all season long. That sort of seemed clear at the start of camp. And then, obviously, you got to go out there and earn it. Like, Alex Kirilloff didn't force the Twins' hand necessarily in spring training. And I think if Vaughn had done what Kirilloff did, just even if we say the guy's like stinging the ball and everything, I mean, if you don't put up a good solid triple slash, the team's probably going to send you to the minors and get that extra year service time. But Vaughn did what he needed to do to make the team, and looking like he's probably going to be 1B OF eligible in a bunch of leagues by the end of the month. So he just,
as long as he doesn't get hurt out there like Eloy did.
Yeah, I think he's maybe more realistic about what he's bringing to the table, and it's definitely not his home run robbing ability in left field.
They're going to be playing Superman out there. That's good. Yeah, that does kind of make me a little nervous, but that added eligibility would be nice as long as he just keeps his wits about him out there and doesn't do anything.
I would just sit down, I don't know if La Russa did this with Eloy or maybe Rick Hahn or someone, but I don't know why at the beginning of spring training you don't just sit Eloy down and just tell him, look, we DH you if we could, but you better not go get hurt playing outfield for us because we need your bat lineup every day. Yeah. That's just such a ridiculous way to lose your best hitter for
the whole season. Yeah, that's terrible, man. I think Leury Garcia is going to get the nod out there on opening day. I think I saw that. But yeah, Vaughn should be a DH, I'd imagine. So yeah, that'll be cool, man. We will start picking through the rest of this top 400 in a second, but a quick word from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Fantasy baseball is here, and you've got to check out these new best ball leagues on Underdog. Best ball is the ultimate test of your live draft skills since there's no in-season management. That's right. Draft your team, and Underdog automatically credits you with your best performing players every week. You don't need to play the waiver wire or worry about trades. It's just the draft. Who doesn't love drafting in Underdog Best Ball? You can draft as many times as you want because you don't have to do any roster management, saving you loads of time. Underdog's Best Ball leagues are drafting right now, starting at just $3. Once the season starts, Underdog also has daily fantasy and an all-new pick'em game. Go download the Underdog app now to get in on some Best Ball before the season starts. Enter promo code ROTOWIRE with your first deposit, and Underdog will honor a money-back guarantee during your first month. Love Underdog or get your money back with promo code ROTOWIRE. Search Underdog in your app store and enter promo code ROTOWIRE. James, one of the guys early on in the list with just one green arrow up, not the dual green arrows up, but Ian Anderson, you kind of came clean on Twitter yesterday. Do you want to kind of lay it out here too? Do you just maybe apologize to Ian? I probably owe him an apology.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize directly to Ian Anderson. I'm
sure
he stayed with us even though we were way too low on him for a long time. He's been a loyal listener.
Sorry, Ian. No, he doesn't. He doesn't listen.
Yeah, I think this is, I'd sort of been kind of thinking in my head for the past week or two, just maybe I'm too low on Anderson and maybe kind of just overrating the quality or overrating pitch grades combined with his prior strike throwing issues in the minors. And I need to just kind of look at him for what he is right this moment. And right this moment, he's a pretty dominant starting pitcher in the big leagues. He's 22 years old. It usually takes most guys till they're 25, 26 to really sort of settle in as that dominant starting pitcher against big league hitters. And, obviously we've talked about the changeup a lot. I mean, that's part of the reason why you could be, if you're just looking at 2019 versus 2020, there was no reason to be as high on him as you needed to be to look smart in 2020 because he had never even shown close to that 70 grade changeup prior to 2020. But he was busting that out early and often, had a lot of success. So we all kind of took note of the changeup. But I think I sort of was putting too much emphasis on the quality of his fastball and the quality of his curveball, and they don't need to necessarily be dominant pitches just by themselves, but his ability to tunnel the changeup off of the fastball, kind of the changeup makes the fastball play up. So it's not just just his fastball by itself, it's not a plus pitch. But when hitters know that changeup is coming, it just kind of makes everything else that much better. And so I think I just missed the boat on that part of the evaluation, but I wanted to right that wrong before he lost his prospect eligibility. So I, did my best there, but I'm sure if you've been following my rankings and stuff like that, you probably don't have Ian Anderson, and I apologize for that.
Well, that's all right, buddy. We forgive you. I got to say, Ian Anderson's kind of like my own personal pitching version of like Aaron Judge when he was a prospect. Like he had one glaring flaw with Anderson, the command, Judge, the K's, that I just didn't know if they could overcome. And I was kind of late coming around, but I got to give Ian Anderson credit too. Like he's just been great. So in the spring, he's only reinforced, what he's done. So I actually don't have him in a single league. I'm not going to blame you, James. I have my own two set of eyes. I can do my own research, but I'm finally coming around. So good on Ian Anderson. He is up to 20th on your top 400. Julio Ramos, double green arrows up. Do you want to talk about Julio Ramos a little bit?
Yeah, he's just, he really caught my eye with how he looked this spring and just how just dialed in he was. He was just ready to do damage, big time bat speed, big time power. And I think he just really kind of, because before this update, I had Luis Matos and Hunter Bishop ahead of him just based on, I thought they had more 5-category juice, but I think Ramos has the most 4-category juice of those three. Just talking batting average, home runs, RBI runs. And he's clearly the closest of those three to the majors. He could be up in June. I think that there's going to be a fab weekend this summer where Julio Ramos is going to go for triple digits in $1,000 fab league. So
love it.
I think when you factor in the proximity, factor in the power, the clear path to an everyday role there in San Francisco, I just felt like it was time for him to get his due.
I absolutely love that. Now, James, when we were talking on the radio last week, I kind of, as we were signing off, just said, hey, any last thoughts on this draft season, anything on your mind? And you said you're having some regret on not having Jazz Chisholm anywhere. He is up to 29th. He has a 1 green arrow up icon on your list here. Have you rectified that lack of Jazz since we talked last? Are you going to rectify that tonight?
I'd love to rectify it tonight. We'll see if we get the opportunity.
He's getting a lot of helium. He went really high in my solo on Sunday.
Well, I get it. There's definitely bust potential. There's not like the type of bust potential like people would sometimes talk about Alberto Modesty before he got hurt, and just talk about the plate skills and like the risk that comes with that. I don't think Modesty is ever going to be at risk of losing playing time because of his bad plate skills. Jazz could lose playing time. Like he could totally kind of cough up that 2B job if he has a really rough month, and it's because this team wants to compete. I don't think they're gonna deal with 6 weeks worth of growing pains from Jazz if he's just not putting up competitive at bats. But there's big time upside if he can just hit. Like he's one of these special guys where if he just hits like you're just hoping like 240, 245, and if he does that, 2020 is very in play. And so you just you want him to keep his head above water at the plate. He's definitely going to handle himself defensively at second base. He could be an excellent defender there. So he just needs to hang in there, give competitive at bats, and then he'll keep that job and he'll put up a ton of power and speed.
I'm pretty excited about Jazz too. And they've had a lot of nice things to say to him in the spring he's put together. He's kind of just took that job. He wrestled it away, and I saw him pimping a home run like late February, very early on, was like, all right, this guy's feeling himself. He might have a spring here, and he did. So we'll see what he can do. He's going to have to hit above the Mendoza line. Alec Minnow, we talked about another guy. I'm kind of mad I didn't actually grab him in this last fab run before the season started, some NFBC leagues. But double arrows up, and then Trevor Rogers. You've been beating this drum, James, really before anyone, and he's seems like every day he's going 4 rounds higher.
That's the guy. That might be the guy that we got the most fortunate on in our main, because
we got him in the 18th round.
Didn't he go like 4 rounds higher than that? Like,
yes,
in your next one or something.
Yep. On Wednesday we got him in the 18th. On Sunday he went in the 14th, and with the first pick of the 14th.
My theory on that is that I don't think he didn't make a start in between those two. I think it's just people
the cat's out of the bag
where they had to take him, because I think people in the main event like wanted him maybe higher than like the 18th where we got him, and it just kind of became a game of chicken of like, well, maybe I can get him here, maybe I can get him there, and then by that next draft, like, people have just been like, I guess if I want him, I got to just really force the issue. So I love him in the 18th. In the 14th, I mean, there it's a big bet for sure. But
he's crazy. Awesome. It's not like that could very well end up being a bargain too in the 14th. But it does seem like just among everybody in the player pool, maybe Trevor Rogers is catching the most helium of anybody right now. And with good reason. Plus, we're going to have to decide. I know we swapped him out of our lineup. I think there's maybe a chance he starts Saturday, although we may not want him against the Rays.
They got to tell us. I mean, they're going to tell us.
They got to tell us. They better tell us. I was just looking at their week next week, and they got 4 in a row, and just having Rogers kick off that series, I don't think would be the best idea. Maybe you slot him in, third into that series so that you break up the righties in that series a little bit.
I would start Rogers against the Rays, personally.
So should we plug him in? I mean, maybe we can't over Dobnak, since we just put in Dobnak as like a...
Well, Dobnak is pitching out of the bullpen.
Yeah.
But
just thought
maybe they want to save him and kind of piggyback him with Shoemaker or something like that. So there's definitely no guarantees Dobnak even pitches this weekend, even though he is in the bullpen. So I'm open to putting Rogers there. I'm going to be basically spending like 3 or 4 hours tomorrow morning, like just getting all these lineups as set as I possibly can with as much information as we can get our hands on. So I'm just really optimistic that they tell us about who's starting this weekend in that third spot. I mean, if we don't know by the time stuff locks, maybe we just got to throw them in as a leap of faith.
Yeah, I hope they tell us. I actually have the choice of, in that Towers head-to-head points, Eliezer or Rogers. So I need to know which one to start to get those points. Michael Harris, not a guy I know a lot about, James, an outfielder in this Atlanta system. 20 years old. He's got the dual green arrows up. What can you tell us about Michael Harris and why he's a riser?
Yeah, I think I know everyone's like mentioning me on Twitter and just like, whoa, like you're driving the Michael Harris bandwagon now. That wasn't, that's not what I'm trying to do here, really. I think everyone maybe just kind of missed the boat, myself included, on how much this guy has improved since we last saw him. And I admit a lot of this I'm kind of relying on beat writers that I trust, like Dave O'Brien with The Athletic has written a lot of interesting stuff on Harris over the last couple months. And he's as plugged in with what Atlanta thinks as anyone. And it kind of seems like he has performed well above, like, in an extremely advanced manner since last year's alternate site and through this spring training run. He had just really, really some impressive at bats. He has a much better approach at the plate, a much better strike zone awareness than a guy like Drew Waters in that same system. And it seems like his emergence has maybe led to Drew Waters kind of being sort of the odd man out there long term. Like it at least seems like he's passed Waters, at least internally, and sort of how they view that hierarchy. So this is a guy that he checks a lot of the same boxes that guys like Hedbert Perez and Luis Matos do, who are ranked about 15 spots higher than him, where you're kind of hoping for plus tools across the board. I don't know if he's quite a plus runner. It might be 55. But I think with the hit tool and with the, maybe it's kind of like above average raw power now, and it develops into a plus tool for him. So I don't know if he has quite the stolen base upside of like Hedbert Perez, but I mean, I think this guy is going to debut next year as in his age 2021 season, and he's a great outfielder, great defender out there. So just everything that I could get my hands on suggested that this was just a guy who needed to be way higher than I had him. And I just kind of played the game of like, would you rather in like a dynasty league, would I trade this guy for him? Would I trade this guy for him? And I initially thought I was going to slot him in like kind of in the 70s. And I just kept moving up, and I was like, nah, I think I'd roll the dice on him hitting his ceiling, because I mean, I think he's moved up his timetable by at least a year and a half relative to where you'd expect him to be. And there's not really a obvious flaw in his game right now. The big question mark is just we don't have game performance to point to and say, see, like, this is what he's doing. We're kind of relying on just sort of what we're hearing and what we're seeing and that type of thing. But I mean, this is kind of how I think you got to play it here. I don't think you want to be late on a guy like this, and you don't want to trade him away for maybe a player where we have more data to work with, but a player who doesn't have his ceiling and has started to show some flaws. So, this is definitely an aggressive rank, but I think it's where he belongs right now on a set of dynasty prospect rankings.
I find that very interesting, especially because, it doesn't sound like you're out on Waters by any means, but the fact that some people in that organization kind of, I don't know, that's, I hadn't heard that. And you're not down on, maybe a little down on Waters. I don't want to put words in your
Waters. Honestly, I think Waters could really use a change of scenery. Like I think it's going to be tough for him to get a fair shake in Atlanta, because he is definitely the type of prospect who could have a rough first, like 150, 200 plate appearances in the majors. And I just don't think that Atlanta has the stomach for that right now. I mean, they're trying to win divisions, they're trying to win World Series. So he's going to have to get better at AAA. And I just think there's a lot of other teams that could afford to give him a full season's worth of at bats and not really care about the results. And I just don't think that's Atlanta.
Nice. Well, before we move on, I'll take care of this last piece of business we have here. Baseball has always been America's pastime, but a close second is horse racing. We've got the best way to get in on the action. Stable Duel brings a new way to play the races against your friends. Similar to what we know only in fantasy football and baseball, you select your team or your stable of horses and compete against other stables for big money prizes. Watch your stable move up the leaderboard as your horses accumulate points based on where they finish the race. The app is free to download, and they offer free games you can learn how to play at zero risk. Don't know anything about horse racing? Don't worry. The app has all you need to know with free data on each horse's record, as well as a risk number, a speed number, and a value number for your best selections. This is the first game of its kind in horse racing, and you don't want to miss out. Download the Stable Duel app now and get in the game. Play, race, win with Stable Duel. So, James, we talked about Trevor Rogers. That ship, at least as far as getting him like at a really, really cheap price, that's kind of sailed. But one guy you could still get in mixed leagues, so I think could be sneaky. And you have the dual green arrows up here on Tarik Skubal. And, we both kind of had our hesitations with him, but you like what you've seen recently?
Yeah, I mean, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, for sure, you would have had to take Skubal ahead of Rogers in a redraft league. But yeah, I think you might be right. I think now maybe you would have to take Rogers ahead of Skubal. Rogers has better team context, I think, and I think he's just a better, safer pitching prospect. But Skubal has a ton of strikeout upside. I mean, that's obviously clear. His fastball is pretty devastating, and I think there's going to be some pretty short outings from him this season. I think the command is still a work in progress, but on a start-to-start basis, he's got a really high strikeout upside, and definitely a mixed league guy. Even if you're in a shallower league, I think he's going to make enough starts and get enough Ks to be relevant in pretty much all formats.
Alejandro Kirk, another riser. I love that he made the team. He went like so much farther ahead of Jansen in the main I did that I ended up just taking Jansen because all the other catchers I liked were gone. So do you see Kirk actually taking over that starter's role like pretty soon, or do you look at him as a backup to start this year, Kirk?
Well, I just think it's going to be tough for them to keep him out of the lineup when, like Danny Jansen's a better defender, but I mean, Kirk's just such a better hitter than.
And they're already down Springer right now.
Yeah. I mean, you could start Kirk at DH. You can start him at catcher. I mean, he's going to be a pinch hit option. It's going to be tough for them to keep his bat out of the lineup in the way that you would your normal backup catcher. And I fabbed him. I think I dropped like 10% of my fab in the Beat James Anderson online championship, I think. Once that news was official that he was
surprised he was unowned or unrostered. That's surprising.
Yeah,
but we did those pretty early in March, though. You and I both.
Yeah. I mean, we did it before he really started to put up a bunch of crazy numbers in spring training. So he was much more of a spec option back then when there was a decent chance he would open in the minors. But I mean, I think he's just
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think he's a clear top 10 redraft catcher now, just because he could lead all catchers in batting average. I mean, that could totally happen, and there's some power there too.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's fantastic. I forget what I was going to say when I was about to interrupt you, but doesn't really matter. But I'm pretty excited about Kirk. Oh, what I was going to say is you're going to be disappointed in me because I did not draft Trevor Rogers, and I had to open the wallet in my Beat Clay Link League. So I know you were beating the drum early. Like you said, even after the first industry draft, like Trevor Rogers has to go in this draft. You were beating the table. So I spent like a quarter of my budget in that league on Trevor Rogers. I also got Emilio Pagan because I lost Kirby Yates. So when that Helio Ramos Fabapalooza goes, I'll probably be the odd man out, being as I'm already about halfway through my budget. But I think, you got to reinforce your roster. I don't want to go down things without a decent closing staff and a 12-teamer.
Well, this is one of the best fab runs you'll get in a league that drafted like 3 weeks ago. I mean, there's going to be more talent available.
Yeah, I owe you an apology though that I missed on Rogers, but I had to make up for it by shelling out in fab. I think it was 257. I love seeing a couple. Well, one red and one former red back to back here. Jonathan India, he's getting up to 91, but he fizzled a little bit, and his stock took a big dip after he got drafted. fifth overall, I believe. And then he was just kind of, but then he really turned some heads, and he seems like a clear guy who, his development over the last year, and we have no way to gauge it, but it seems significant for Jonathan India.
Yeah, and this is kind of a range where I put three guys, Darren Duran, Jonathan India, Taylor Trammell, that I don't necessarily believe in them long term, and I don't have any shares of any of them in any dynasty leagues, but I would roster them at this point just inside the top 100 because of proximity. I mean, Duran's going to debut this year. India, Trammell, obviously, they have everyday jobs, it seems. So you just see what they do. I mean, they could hit the ground running. I'm not really in on them, but you can't ignore what they did to win these jobs, and they certainly outperformed my expectations this spring. And once you get outside that top 75, top 80, I mean, it's really easy to move up in a hurry in that range.
Yeah.
There's not a lot separating the 90th prospect from the 150th prospect. So, I mean, I think the proximity factor, and I mean, all it would take is for one of those guys to get off to a hot start in April, and you could get a ton for him in Dynasty. So I think that has to be factored in.
Yeah, I got to say, I like what I've seen from Trammell myself this spring. He's looked really good. I actually have him in one league. Probably the worst place to have him, the RotoWire Stake League, because I just need to finish top half of that league. And, you got to imagine there's some downside with Trammell. If things go really ugly, it could hurt my average. But looking forward to seeing what he can do. Maybe provide a little category juice, Taylor Trammell, and getting his first shake. Now, Chris Rodriguez is a guy with a couple arrows down. He actually made the team, but are you moving him down, Chris Rodriguez, because you think, he's going to be in the bullpen, and now you're thinking that may very well be where he stays?
Well, I think based on – did you see Joe Madden's comments on him from a couple weeks ago?
I must have missed it.
I don't think I've ever seen a manager say this about a prospect as highly touted as Rodriguez, but Madden basically said he looks like a reliever to him.
Buried by Joe.
I mean, I think Madden's definitely lost his fastball at this point. I mean, I definitely don't consider him in the upper echelon of managers the way that I once did. But
me neither.
And I think I think Rodriguez has a better chance to start than Joe Madden. But it definitely matters what Joe Madden thinks, because he's someone that is making those decisions. And I mean, I think the Angels, I mean, he's on the 40-man. I think it's hard to argue that he's one of their 8 or 9 best relievers at this point, because he's got disgusting stuff. But with kind of all three of those guys, I have AJ Park, Michael Kopech, Chris Rodriguez, and then even Shane McClanahan right behind them. I mean, they're all guys where they have a very high ceiling as a starter or as a reliever, but it just sort of seems for various reasons. And in the case of Puck and Kopech and Rodriguez, a lot of it's just missed time and injuries. They might kind of get pigeonholed in that reliever role. And once a guy has success out of the bullpen, if there are concerns about his durability and what might happen if you stretch him out, it's a lot easier to leave him in the bullpen if you know that they're having success there. So I think that's definitely something to consider. I mean, it doesn't mean that Rodriguez can't be the Angels closer in a year. I mean, that could definitely happen, and he'd be pretty awesome in that role. But just seems like there's at least a 50% chance that he does not get developed as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I was watching a spring game earlier this year with McClanahan pitching, and Eric Neander was raving and talking about how, we view him as a starter and we're going to keep him as a starter. But then they lose Nick Anderson. You could just totally see the Rays. And they did it in the postseason last year, just bringing him in as a long guy, maybe even getting him some saves, McClanahan, this year. And then if he has success, you just kind of, you don't officially close the book, but you kind of quietly move away from starting project. Akil Baddoo, James, you got to scroll down the list, but he's been added, Rule 5 guy, and And credit to him. He really, I mean, not only did he hit well enough for them to want to keep him around, but I can see Akil Baddoo maybe starting quite a bit with this team in evaluation mode.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's not that if you are a person with a pulse who has any talent at all, you should be able to stake your claim to some significant at bats on that roster.
No kidding. I mean, it's going to be bad tomorrow, especially with Miggy at first base.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can tell by where I
field.
slotted Badu in, 246. I am very skeptical that what he did this spring is legit. But again, if I can bump Michael Harris up a ways based on his improvement, even though they might have been more documented than Baddoo's prior to the Rule 5 draft, we don't know. I don't know for sure that Baddoo isn't just a much better player prior to spring training than he had been when we last saw him. It just seems like, Rule 5 guys are available for a reason. And I think Detroit was that was a savvy move, scooping him up. But you had 29 other teams that could have gotten him for basically nothing and chose not to. So the opportunity is great. I mean, we always, how often are we talking about prospects and saying, oh, we wish they were on the Tigers? Well, Baddoo's on the Tigers and he's got a chance. He's definitely got interesting tools. I worry about how long he can keep his head above water against big league pitching. But yeah, he earned like a spot on there.
Maybe a small sample trap a little bit.
Oh yeah, I would bet it is a small sample trap. But I mean, I'm not going to just, he's got enough speed to steal double-digit bases and enough power to hit double-digit home runs, and he's got a shot at everyday playing time. So I think I do have to rank him, but I'm not telling people, and I've told plenty of people over the past week. I've got more questions about Akil Baddoo probably than anyone, and I have not been saying, yeah, you got to go get him or you got to go add him. I'm definitely skeptical, but he earned his way into the 250s.
Yeah, we always do talk about, oh man, I wish, who was that guy on the A's, Matt?
Well, I
corner
wish,
or middle infield guy, but I forget his name. There's always guys that we wish could get playing time.
I wish Drew Waters was on the Tigers. I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. This one pains me a little bit, but it's not a surprise given our conversations over the past couple of months. Hunter Greene down big time, 230. It seems like this will probably make you the low man on Hunter Greene, I imagine, in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where other people have him. I just want to make it very clear to our subscribers that you should not be optimistic with this one. This is one where odds are it's just not going to work out. And if you're in a shallow enough league where there are guys, like a handful of guys, inside the top 200 that are maybe available, I don't think there's any shame in cutting bait on Hunter Greene at this point. I mean, best case scenario, like if I'm holding him right now, what I'm hoping for is that he becomes the Reds closer. I think hoping that he develops into a quality starting pitcher. Like, even if that happens, we're talking like 3 years down the road at least, probably before that happens. And obviously he could get hurt again. So there's just all kinds of risk. There's not much reason for optimism for the reasons we've talked about a lot with him. I mean, the fastball it's velocity only. It doesn't really have any other promising characteristics. And the secondaries and the command need a lot of work. So it's sad, but I don't think people should be just holding him for the name value. You have to look at your league and who's out there, which free agents are out there, because there are probably pitchers that a lot of people haven't even heard of who are better players to own right now in Dynasty than Hunter Greene.
Well, it sounds like it's time to trade time to trade if you have him in a league, and maybe that trading window will be closing in over the next year or so. So you might want to get the most out of your Hunter Greene share and cash out while you can.
I'll give you a couple guys. Like, I bet in a lot of dynasty leagues right now, you could drop Hunter Greene and pick up either Connor Seabold of the Red Sox or Cole Franklin of the Cubs. And I don't think you would regret that move. I think Seabold probably makes some starts in the majors this year for the Red Sox. He'd been showing much improved velocity this spring, and Cole Franklin is one of the Cubs' best pitching prospects. He's got probably just as high of a ceiling as Hunter Greene as a starting pitcher without the concerns that come with Greene's profile.
Well, this is why you're the best in the industry, because you are always out ahead of these things, James. And I'm with you, man. From what I saw, love that heater, but nothing else really seems to be there right now. Miguel Yajure down the list of ways, 290. He's a riser for you, but he's the kind of guy who I didn't really know anything about, but he was kind of like a Derek Van Riper guy, a guy I heard him mention once. Just a deep dive guy. And, you think there's something there for him to pitch this year, Miguel Yajure?
Yeah, this is kind of a proximity meets opportunity type of situation. I mean, I think he's kind of, I wouldn't expect him to be much more than like a number 3, but he's got a starter's repertoire. He's got enough pitches to start. It seems like he's probably got enough command to start. And this is a great organization to be in, Pittsburgh. If you're just looking for that opportunity, I mean, he should get a pretty nice, 12, 15 start run at some point this season, I would imagine. And I don't expect him to be more than like a streamer. The problem with being on the Pirates is you don't get to start the Pirates pitchers against the Pirates because they don't get to play each other. But I think Yajure maybe shows enough this year that he's well on the mixed league endgame side of things next year.
Very nice, man. Well, I know you got a draft tonight. I do too, and I'm excited for tomorrow. I know. Well, we were talking about meeting up, maybe watching some, but I got to watch the Reds. I need full attention on the Reds tomorrow, James. So while you guys watch the Brewers, I'll be watching the Reds.
I really respect how good of a Reds fan you are.
Dude, somebody hit me up on Twitter recently, like in the DMs, was like, how are people Reds fans? Like, it just must be pain all the time. Like, it is.
I am such a fair weather sports fan. It's not even funny.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true.
I'd take my hat off to you.
Well, good luck in your draft tonight. Anything else you want to mention? A lot of new additions to the top 400 that we didn't mention. Obviously, you guys can check those out for yourself, rotowire.com. But anything else you want to mention?
No, just hit me up on Twitter or I'm going to have an article hopefully later today, kind of detailing some of the guys that I think are interesting, but I'm definitely not going to have time to touch on all of them or even like half of the guys that might be interesting. So hit me up in the comment section or on Twitter and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all the work you do. Check it out for yourself. Top 400 Prospects by James Anderson, rotowire.com/pod. Good luck in the rest of your drafts. Good luck this first opening weekend, and hope you'll join us next week on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast.